the April 8th, 2021 Town Board Work Session. Please rise for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I don't have any announcements. I saved them for the voting meeting. There is just one quick announcement that I've been discussing the last several months. We are planning on doing some changes in Town Hall with different departments. We've been preparing the old Town Hall, which is located next to the police department, to house the tax receiver's office. So that is planned for the middle of this month. We are almost done with the second round of tax collection, so we're just about done. So for September, we will have a lot of notices going out. We will have signage, and to alert everybody that the new tax office will be at the Old Town Hall, located next to the police department. So we're growing here. We have a real growing water and sewer department. We're running out of space. And, you know, we're doing the best we can with the space that we have, so we are being creative. But I just want to make that announcement, and we will have everything posted on the website, social media, once the move is completed. But, and I'd like to really thank our highway department, Bush Kidney and his crew for all the work they're doing over there. We're doing it all in-house, and they're doing a tremendous job, so thank you very much. So tonight, we have two items on our agenda. The first, we have some representatives here with us, who are town planner, Michelle Robbins, and we started a housing stock committee over a year ago, yep. And well, with COVID, things, you know, they escalate pretty quickly, and you lose time. We lost a lot of time because of COVID, but Michelle will give an overview of how the housing stock committee met and what they discussed, but basically, we wanted to look at all the different housing in our town, senior housing, workforce housing, single-family, multifamily, and see where we stood, see how, what we are in need of. We do want to make sure that we plan accordingly, plan correctly, we don't overbuild too quickly. That happened really in the early 90s here in East Fishkill. And, you know, sometimes we pay the price with traffic and other considerations that they didn't think of back then, but we don't want to make those mistakes. That's why we have a full-time planner, and we're very lucky to have her, and we have good professionals that review this. So tonight we have Craig Arco and Mr. Joe Patinella with us tonight. They are two of the 5 members of the Housing Stock Committee. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle, give a little overview of the committee.
Sure. So the Housing Committee met, it was sort of a continuation of some studying that we've been doing of the Route 52 corridor, the industrial lands in the town, and then this was a look at the housing, because we're working towards updating our master plan, and these reports will be incorporated into any update to the master plan that we do. So I first just want to acknowledge the committee members and thank them very much for all their work. It was a great committee. We had a lot of fun, I think. So we met about 5 times. The members of the committee were Agnese Versace, Jill Dutcher, Craig Arco, who is here with us tonight, Joe Patinella, who is also here with us tonight, and Madeline Rum. And we met 5 times. One time we had, we invited Dutchess County Planning to come. And we had Ann Saylor and Dylan Tuttle speak to us about regional trends in housing. And Ann Saylor is sort of a housing guru in the county. She works a lot on housing issues. She's done a lot of, she's prepared a lot of housing reports. So she came in and sort of gave us an overview of Dutchess County's position vis-a-vis housing. It's going to be a different position than the town has, but she was sort of giving us the regional trends, the housing trends.
So Michelle, could you explain that a little bit to the board and to people at home watching? How do they come up with these studies, and why do they come up with the studies, and what do they look at?
So the county is actually working on updating a study that they did, I think it was back in 2009. And they looked at a bunch of different things. It was a huge undertaking. And it wasn't just Dutchess County that did it. It was several other counties as well. And they looked at housing availability. They looked at housing cost. They looked at types of housing. And what they found back in 2009 was that we had a real shortage of what they called middle housing, or multifamily housing, or housing that was not either single family or giant multifamily projects like you would find in larger cities like Poughkeepsie, for instance, right?
Gotcha.
So they looked at these things and they sort of calculated in each town or city within the counties what they thought the shortfall of that housing was. And they did it based on demand and what they were seeing with folks that were coming to the county looking for certain types of housing, like senior housing or young professional housing, maybe townhomes. And they really found that, for instance, in East Fishkill, we had an overabundance of single-family housing, but not really much else at the time. We've worked over the years to get different types of housing, and for example, across the street, we now have a multifamily housing project across from Town Hall, but we still have a shortage of some types of housing in town. And they suggested basically that we consider expanding and broadening our housing stock, because it makes your economy healthier, and it allows for people to age within your community, or age either way, age in place, either get older and move into smaller housing, or if you're a young person starting out, you can start in an apartment and then buy a home. And what they were finding is that young people, particularly in very expensive housing markets like Westchester, but even up here, that they were what they call a brain drain, because these younger people weren't able to afford to live in the communities that they grew up in. So they were actually leaving and going to other locations to start living and start their lives, and then they never really returned, because once they started or situated themselves in a community, they didn't ever really come back to where they started from, or sometimes they didn't come back. So we were looking at all these different things because we've had a lot of inquiries in the planning office about housing, multifamily housing, people that either want to do projects or want to live, a lot of senior housing requests. And we started saying, well, maybe we ought to look at our housing stock and kind of figure out what makes sense for East Fishkill. So the committee, we talked about all these things with the committee, and we started making some recommendations. But first, I just want to go back and talk a little bit about the Route 52 corridor study that was done, because that ties into the housing study. And so if you recall, last summer, Behan Planning Consultants did a study of the Route 52 corridor between the Taconic Parkway and just beyond the intersection with Blue Hill Road. And they made some recommendations about what they thought should occur there. And one of the reasons driving the study were basically that the Route 52 corridor is one of the most heavily trafficked corridors in East Fishkill. There's about 14,000 cars per day. And I'm just going to read off some statistics here. And it's basically, we had been getting a bunch of complaints about traffic, but we'd also been concerned about some water quality issues in the area, specifically how it related to, I think it was excess sodium found from in water supply wells in the area. And we also knew there were some challenges to that section of Route 52 because there was no centralized sewer services in the area. So we decided to take a pause and look at and study it a little bit, because we knew that there was some additional development proposed, or people were coming to us with inquiries about maybe having zoning changes and stuff, and we said, well, what could we do so that we're not exacerbating any of the issues that we just discussed? And we prepared this report. And out of the report came a series of recommendations, and one of them was to sort of plan land use around that area becoming sort of a newer, vibrant hamlet center, focusing on existing investment and increasing opportunities for residential options, and maybe including higher density zoning in appropriate areas, improving access to sidewalks, bike lanes, and contributing to sort of creating this livable hamlet area and connecting it to other uses in the area. With that, they also recommended intersection improvements, roadway improvements. They also recommended, or they talked about the lack of central wastewater in the area, and obviously, assuming there's funds available, potentially having wastewater improvements that would allow for a larger housing project, for example. And then zoning options, and the actual recommendation was to create some sort of overlay district or a new zoning district that would be a more efficient way to implement zoning changes. So based on that, we said, oh, okay, let's look at this, let's look at housing in this area, and then we thought we really needed to take a look at housing townwide. So that's what we did. And the committee members here helped me come up with a bunch of recommendations. And I guess I'll just start talking about them, and you guys can chime in if you want to. The first thing we talked about was really like, how many units is too many units? And how do we sort of come to a number that seems reasonable right now?
Well, that's always on our mind. The town board is constantly, wants to be sure that we don't have too many units. We want to be very cognizant of traffic issues and other parameters that go with housing, different types of housing. So we are very wondering what the recommendations were from the regional study and then what your committee came up with.
Right, so by way of comparison, the regional study in 2009 showed that the town of East Fishkill had a shortfall, what they considered a shortfall of 950, at least 950 multifamily units.
Shortfall.
That was a shortfall, and that was 2009. I asked Ann Saylor from the county what she thought the shortfall was today, if it had gotten any better or any worse, and she said, actually, if anything, it's gotten a lot worse. So we can assume, based on what the county told us, that they believe that we have a shortfall of multifamily apartments of over 1,000. In their mind, that they think the East Fishkill community could accommodate at least that many units. You know, I think, assuming we want to protect neighborhood character, we want to keep the town livable, we have to think about traffic, we have to think about infrastructure. We can't just willy-nilly start approving 1,000
Absolutely. I don't
residential
think
units everywhere.
I don't think this town
So-
board would approve 1,000 units
Exactly. So,
at all.
so one of the things that the housing committee started talking about was, you know, what's reasonable? Like what could be accommodated, and what infrastructure could we put in place or is existing that could accommodate housing? And so one of the numbers that came up, or the number that came up that we thought might be a reasonable number, and this would of course not be in 1 year, but was about 400 units throughout the town.
Okay.
And this number would include housing types such as, and not just multifamily apartments, but would include housing types such as senior starter cottage developments, which are developments that have smaller homes,
So
usually.
they're single-family homes?
They're single-family homes or cottages, really. You see them a lot in the south and out west, and they are sort of constructed around a central courtyard, maybe 5 or 6 units on an acre or so. I mean, it just depends on what the town decides they want to see. And then they have maybe some sort of central courtyard or a community building in the middle. And sometimes they're 1-story, sometimes they can be 2-story, but they're usually not more than 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. Everybody's got a very tiny yard, and they've been very, very successful in other places. And that seemed like a housing type that we thought might work well here, particularly for folks that want to have a home here, but also maybe go to Florida during the winter, and maybe stay here because their grandchildren are here, or they have roots in the area. But it also could work as a starter home for younger folks. And there's a product like that that's sort of similar to that in the Four Corners development. When you're driving, it's on the right-hand side. Those are smaller bungalow-type homes, which have been very successful. And then the other housing type that came up that folks thought would be really great to see here, or more of, would be townhomes. And there's some townhomes that were recently constructed as part of the Hopewell Glen development, and I think those have been doing quite well. Senior housing was another type of housing that was considered, And then, of course, maybe some limited multifamily apartments.
I have seniors calling my office weekly,
Yeah.
asking, different seniors, asking, when are you getting senior housing? How come you don't have senior housing? So,
And there was quite a demand for the apartments across the street when they came in from seniors and
Right.
other folks as well. Then the other thing, it was recommended that the town prioritize higher density housing types such as senior starter cottage developments and townhomes, because those housing types would be most compatible with the town's existing character. Housing density should be located in walkable areas with access to water and sewer infrastructure. Second-story residential above commercial should be permitted throughout Hopewell Hamlet and to activate the Hamlet Center. So there was a real desire among the Housing Committee members to focus the density in sort of the Hopewell Hamlet area and then also the Route 52 corridor. Those were the two areas of town they thought could accommodate the density and the more activation of the streetlight. The other location mentioned was like potentially off of Lime Kiln Road. It was also recommended that new residential uses in Fishkill Plains be limited to second-story residential above commercial due to the existing infrastructure limitations and the suburban automobile-oriented character of Route 376. It's less walkable there, less dense currently, and there's not the infrastructure to accommodate right now. It was also recommended that the town consider permitting assisted living along the Route 52 corridor or Lime Kiln Road. Lime Kiln Road was also considered a potential location for a higher density housing project because of its access to I-84 and I-Park / the new Amazon facility that's going to be constructed. So potentially housing for workers that might be working on the I-Park or Amazon campus. And it was also recommended that the town consider, the other location that we talked a lot about was the Stormville Airport, which was recently zoned in the last year to a conservation residential development. And so it was recommended that the town consider there no more than around 250 units of housing on the former Stormville Airport site, and that the site be designed to cluster the housing and maintain the bucolic and rural character of the site. It was also recommended that that sports fields potentially be considered as part of any housing development on the site.
so that CRD zone that changed zoning for the airport, can you explain to everybody what CRD zoning entails, please?
Sure. So the only other, another project in the town that is zoned CRD is the Hopewell Glen project. And basically it allows for a range of housing types in one development. It also allows for some very limited commercial development, usually commercial that is supportive of the residential housing. Cafes, maybe a little general store, dry cleaners, that kind of retail. And it also allows for sports fields, rec fields, to be part of the development. There's some accessory uses that are permitted, and it allows for clustering. So you can get denser houses in a smaller amount of land, but then leave larger open spaces, for recreation and also for visual appearance. So those were the recommendations from the committee. I don't know if you guys want to add anything more to what I just spoke about.
A lot of the limitations on selecting certain areas is the infrastructure, and we talked about that with the county. The county dropping these numbers, we were never an apartment-type community.
Right.
We were off Route 9, the loop bus maybe went through Hopewell, that was it. So all these towns, Wappingers, Fishkill, they all have the infrastructure in place to increase the housing that they're looking for. East Fishkill never was like that.
Yeah, only the last decade or so, we've been expanding water, sewer infrastructure as best we can in the town, but like you said, without that infrastructure in place, you can't facilitate that type of growth that some people are looking for. And not that we are looking for that, but we understand that it's a need. So we, obviously, with your recommendations, the town board will have to make some decisions as to where and how much we're going to choose to do. Obviously, like the planner said, we can't do this over a year. This has to be a multi-year plan, and perhaps maybe we set a goal of, 5 or 6 years and see what happens, and after that, review it again. Mr. Pattinello?
Yeah, I would say one of the challenges is, for example, at the Stormville Airport is the infrastructure, water, sewer availability. And once you get developers, similar to what Toll Brothers did at Hopewell Glen, they can help contribute to create a municipal water sewer system, and then everything feeds around that. I think the other thing we looked at was improving the town centers, making them more attractive. Obviously, mixed-use buildings create a nice appearance for a town center. The question becomes, how do we incentivize the existing property owners along Fishkill Plains or along the Hopewell Hamlet to invest in a second-story residential to create more walking paths and things like that. So those are some of the things we kicked around.
Right, and this was, you know, part of our discussion and planning. Like you mentioned, how do you incentivize these property owners? There were so many comments I would receive. Oh, the Hopewell Hamlet is so dated, the buildings are old, they look terrible. Oh, the town isn't in charge of upkeeping these properties or changing their facades, but, so the town board did take action, and we did change zoning in the Hamlet and in Fishkill Plains to allow residential over commercial. So incentivize these guys that they can possibly increase revenue by having some apartments upstairs of their commercial units, and in the process, we would want them to renovate their buildings. So, you know, it is difficult, and costs are expensive, but the town does try to facilitate whatever we can to assist them, so.
I would say there's a lot of activity right now in the 52 corridor, now with Amazon, what's going on at iPark, so I think those changes there could be done pretty quickly. I think we'll see a lot of changes along that 52
Right.
corridor with developers looking to come
And
forward
there
with
is
projects.
infrastructure limited there, but there is infrastructure there, so. And so the recommendation that the committee is giving for the units, we would also already add in the projects that we have on slate already. We
Right,
have a
correct.
senior housing going in, and we have another apartments going on 52, so that would be deducted off the total now.
Right, so during the committee meeting, there were a couple of housing projects that were under review with the planning board. So, as a result of that, I asked that question. I said, are we talking about this in addition to anything that may come out of the planning board, or may not come out of the planning board, or are we talking about 400 in total? And it was clear it was 400.
Including what's
Including
on
what
the
was being
planning board, right.
considered, assuming that is approved. One of the projects has since been approved by the planning board, one is still awaiting approval.
Excellent, excellent. Board members, any questions or comments?
Well, for one, thank you all so much for your efforts in this, and thank you, Michelle. This is phenomenal. One thing I just want to be mindful of is we already have 220 miles of town road right now, and to read about like developments going in Somerville Airport, which I think is great. It's just some, added work for our already strained highway department in regards to paving and all that other stuff. It's just going to add to it in the future. But no, this is great, and definitely a lot to consider here.
Michelle, when you did your presentation, as far as starter applications for the younger generation, they said in the study, the county suggested that a lot of young people right now are moving to other locations. Anywhere specific that we're losing the young population to at
Well,
this point?
I mean, in all honesty, things are a little bit up in the air now because of COVID, because COVID has really shaken up the housing market quite a bit. So prior to that, kids were, I call them kids, but the younger professionals were generally moving to more urban areas where there were walkability and where they had services and recreation near them, things that they could do, basically, and where they could afford. And so that initially was driving some of the housing projects that you were seeing in Westchester, and a lot around like transit-oriented development, like around the train stations and things like that. It's sort of unclear what is going to happen with the housing market in the future, how COVID has affected things, but I've been reading a few articles recently, and they think actually the housing market's gonna come back pretty strong, and they think that multifamily will still be in high demand. And they also, where they were talking about the product, though, being slightly different, like multifamily that has a lot of amenities, but also that is larger, potentially, like larger units, because they think that people are gonna want home offices, for example, now, and things, because there may be a lot of working from home that wasn't happening before.
That's interesting, yeah.
So there is, I mean, nobody really knows exactly what's gonna happen, but there is optimism about the housing market in general, and I think that we've seen, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think we've seen a huge demand up here since the pandemic started, and I think that will likely continue. And, you know, it's because of the quality of life and the things that we have up here, and people are, I think, taking advantage of the fact that they can work from home and work from more bucolic locations, and they don't have to commute.
Does that also go for the seniors as well, as Councilman Marinaro said? We're losing our younger generation to move elsewhere, also our seniors?
So, you know, I don't know, I can try to find that out, I'm not sure. I didn't see that talked about as much, but what is happening to seniors is that they're having trouble of affording or taking care of larger homes, like in this area. And they may have, you know, they may want to get out of here when the weather's bad, but then they can't afford two places, or they can't take care of two places, or certainly not a gigantic home here and then, you know, a place in Florida. So they're looking to downsize here, maybe to a 1,200 square foot house.
Right.
That's easier to take care of, and then have a place also in a warmer
Right,
climate.
it's very expensive to retire in New York State, and it's not getting any easier for our seniors.
We're now the highest tax state as of yet.
Right, so,
If I could add what Michelle said, and going to your question, Manny, many of the young people today are looking for transient. They're not, in our generation, we couldn't wait to buy a home and have our piece of the rock. Today, young people are looking at rental options because they're transient, they're moving, and that's why Hoboken, New Jersey is so popular, because a lot of rental opportunities for young generation to go into the city. So having a nice residential rental stock would be ideal for the youth. In terms of the seniors, I think that we've been behind in providing housing for seniors. You know, they're looking for turnkey, they're looking for easy maintenance, condominium, townhouse type of living, and we don't have that. And, you know, most of East Fishkill is large homes, and you know, you have to plow your plow your driveways and shovel your sidewalks and maintain your roof, and so they want to get away from that. And I've seen a project in Michigan where they look like single-family homes, but they're actually condominiums, where the homeowner actually owns within the unit, but the association maintains the structures. And the seniors love that because they don't have to worry about any type of outdoor maintenance. So that type of housing would be ideal if we could provide that.
So, Joe, you're in the real estate market. It is a delicate issue to really, for the town board of East Fishkill to balance this act right now. I think that a priority, like the town supervisor mentioned before, is senior housing. We are lagging in providing the senior housing, and many times they're forced to move out of the area because there is no convenient housing where they could downsize to. So, as far as the young generation is concerned, I agree with you totally. They are transient. They go where their friends are, and availability of jobs. So, right now, we are trying to create jobs, but it's not just up to us. It's the economy, the way the economy revolves. East Fishkill is, you know, we're not close to a train station. And it's mostly designed to be residential. So if we rush to decide to say, you know what, let's build these units for the young generation, we might, and it is like, it comes to a saturation point where we have built too many. And the other thing that is happening right now economically, Joe, you might correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's probably impossible at this point to build units that are affordable because of the cost of building those units.
Absolutely.
the costs are becoming prohibitive. So, yes, let's do it. And the other thing, even when we changed the zoning, which was a great idea, but yet we're lacking the infrastructure. And we all know how expensive it is for any, I don't want to put the tax burden on any individual in the community to build a multi-million dollars of sewer system to facilitate certain things to happen. I mean, that would be really crazy. So, I mean, you guys did a great job giving us a presentation, but I caution that we go kind of like step by step. And, I mean, if I had to prioritize right now, I think the senior home is probably one of our utmost priorities to really take care of and facilitate that. We have the baby boomers. They are all coming to, right now, to the point where they're retiring. They have nowhere to go. They don't want to live here, and many of them live for warmer weather and less expensive. It is not cheap to live around East Fishkill or anywhere in New York at this point. If you are on a, certain amount of money that you got to balance your act with medications, expenses, and everything else. So it's really a tough thing to do, and I mean,
And just to make a mention of what you said, Councilman, the town doesn't spend taxpayer dollars on water and sewer projects. Those are in districts, and that's borne by who gets benefited from those districts. So at a lot of times, when there is water or sewer expansion, the cost really is burdened by the developer. And that's why certain areas see more development than others, because they have the infrastructure already in place. But if we are to expand certain areas of town where we're going to allow townhomes or other homes that seniors can afford, we have to come up with a plan to expand that water and sewer, but it would be borne by the developer and the other users in the district as well.
so I agree with you on that, Nick, but let's always realize, and over here we have Mr. Pampanello, who's in the real, when we put that burden on the developer puts that cost, the final cost of that product, to the seller. Whether it is initially absorbed by the developer, that cost shoots up the price of either rental for that unit or the price of the sale of that unit. Am I correct?
That is correct, that is correct.
Yes,
You don't just
but-
keep that in, I understand, you're very correct in asserting that, but, again,
Yeah, but you have, what he's saying is you gotta give them a chance to get, you gotta give them enough stuff so they can get their money back.
And
At
I
a
think,
reasonable rate.
right, what if,
Right, there's no mechanism for the town, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, for the town to expend taxpayer dollars to expand water and sewer,
Not
Not-
beyond those that are benefited.
not beyond those who benefit.
But if I could just, I see it in other jurisdictions also, both seniors and the young people, they want a different type of, not only that they want apartments and mobility, but they also want walkability within, and they want a sense of place. So that I think our concept, is that you build 50 apartments and you stick it on Beekman Road, just as an example. That doesn't work anymore. What you have to do, and we're probably at the crossroads, because the towns below us don't have big pieces of property left, and they're trying to massively jam gymnasiums, coffee shops, everything into the first few floors of a big building. But I think the people are, like, for instance, in Fishkill Plains, if you put units on top of those buildings, they can walk down, they don't need to get into the car to do everything, which is another thing most young people don't want to do. They don't want to be driving the car all the time. So to have a restaurant, a dry cleaner, a deli, all within walking distance, and to their credit, most people, younger than I, like to be mobile and walk or bike ride and everything. We have the trail system. So I think we're at crossroads that not only do we perhaps need to take care of the seniors and the young people, but we have to do it in such a way that we create a sense of place and a community within the town itself, so.
I agree with Tom, it has to be created around town centers. So you have to isolate those town centers. It can't be haphazard. You can't, like Tom said, you can't have a multifamily on Beekman Road. It has to be, whether it's Fishkill Plains, the Hopewell Hamlet, the 52 corridor, and isolate it in those areas and focus on those areas. And the only thing I'd add, Manny, is in Hopewell Glen's case with Toll Brothers, 10% of those units were affordable units. So there was, in that plan, there was a mandate to the developer to have 10% of those units, or 28 of the units were affordable.
Now,
But also that was for sale, that wasn't.
Vero, is it Vero Drive in Poughkeepsie up behind St. Peter's Cemetery?
Yes, Bureau, that's,
Now, that's kind of like the senior development she was talking about earlier, where they're all like 800,000 square foot homes.
yes, that's the Gables. They're single-level units. However, the developer owns the property, and each unit owner has a 99-year lease. So,
Really?
Yeah, so
I
he
didn't
actually got
realize
it approved as a site plan, not as a...
Well, that's
site-
really manufactured homes.
That's
They're
manufactured homes,
manufactured
single,
homes. That's not,
I mean, but I'll tell you what, when that went in,
right.
the seniors flocked there like,
Yes, my mother and father-in-law went there exactly for the single-level living.
it was
One level,
beautiful, it was
right.
all-
Yes, recreation area, pool,
Yeah.
clubhouse.
Walkability, one level,
I
yeah.
think what
that's
Michelle was
important.
mentioning in the cottages, it's similar style, but a concept that is actually a foundation and a home,
right,
in smaller lots, because, you know, none of us want to take care of the
because
the
something
yard
like,
and everything else.
something like that, and part of the problem, why people are leaving the area, you can't afford.
That's
It's
right.
New
Go
York.
rent an apartment right now, it's $1,500 a month,
At least.
1,500 plus utilities.
In Westchester, they're paying even more.
I know they are, but
2,500,
they're used to
3,000.
paying more, and the new ones going up around here. But you
They're-
can't find an apartment in East Fishkill for probably under 1,300 a month.
Oh, no, yeah, it's expensive still.
And if you're working, and
But,
you
but,
talk about the younger generation, I got the people that are working in all these stores and everything in town, and they're spending their whole paycheck to pay that rent.
that's correct, but for a senior who is carrying a large home,
Right.
and they have
But you
a
need
$8,000 to $10,000 tax bill,
Yep,
that they welcome a $1,300 or $1,500 rent.
yeah.
But the problem with the rentals is not just a problem with Fishkill.
No,
Regionally.
Right.
We
Right.
have that problem, and that problem, right now,
There's
in New York
both. You
City.
need both.
Astoria is a booming place for all working young people. They're moving out of New York City because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
And they're moving to Astoria. Astoria right now is doing phenomenal with the housing. They're re-upping all the old buildings and whatever else. But in each two-bedroom, you have maybe 4 kids, 4 young people living in there, because the rental for that two-bedroom is about $3,000, $3,500. So they split in the expenses. It's very hard to live in New York.
Yep, but a lot of the houses that are being sold to seniors, a lot of the ones I see, they're leaving their home, but they're moving into those developments. And a lot of them are walking in, they're selling this house and then paying more for a smaller house,
Right.
and then paying common charges.
Right, because they don't have to do any maintenance, which is a big deal for
You
them.
know, it's not that they're pocketing 300,000 too, moving in there.
Right, those units sell for approximately $225,000 to $250,000. Their common charges are very high, they're about $500 a month.
Wow.
Wow,
They're
that's a
paying
lot.
that, yeah. But the ease of living and maintenance that they don't have to worry about makes
Right.
it
Yep,
so attractive, so.
You know, and the other issue, Joe, is that it will be very difficult for, for even the town board to delineate in the future any costs that a project might open in the town of East Fishkill and say, okay, what will the cost be? Because the trends are changing so fast. And everybody wants to make money. And the maintenance is one of the things that, we really can't really manage.
Right.
Because it's up to the individual who runs that operation. Even over here with Toll Brothers in Fishkill Road, there are those costs that I'm sure that those people have to take care of. Like, cutting the grass, planting, snow removal
Also
near
includes
the
your garbage
homes.
pickup.
Those, they go up every year, but it's just the way the economy in New York State, unfortunately, it is right now.
Yeah, it's not easy, that's for sure. I just want to thank you all for all the hard work you did on this Housing Stock Committee. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the units that you came up with in 400, because I think comparatively to the county, this is very reasonable. I think over 1,000 units is just unreasonable in East Fishkill. And I'm in agreement with the rest of with this board about senior housing. I'd also like to see some assisted living as well. I think focusing on senior housing, and if it can somehow be affordable for them, because I do believe, I think as you were saying, the market is very high for it. So, and it would be nice if our seniors could actually retire here comfortably. And I have received phone calls in the past about people who live here who want to bring their parents here so they don't have to go to them, and that would be nice as well. So, but again, thank you for all the work on this.
Joe, who's building that development right outside Lutheran Care in Poughkeepsie? Who built that development? That went up in a weekend.
Kirchhoff,
Huh?
Joe Kershaw.
Joe Kirchhoff,
That went up in a weekend.
yes.
There had to be 1,000 homes opened up
That
there.
was the old Frank Farm that he developed.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to see,
I mean, it went up in a weekend, and that store, they got the stores and everything in the middle. It's beautiful.
Keep in mind, they had an enormous infrastructure to tap into.
Oh, no, I know they
Right.
did, because everything was already
They had
there.
sewer, they had gas, they had everything throughout the entire site.
But I couldn't believe how quick that development went up.
Yeah.
well, I think the town board should do, let's look over the next year or so, what we think we should do with developing a plan to pass legislatively, and have meetings, get more input from the community, and we take our time doing it. So, and with that, we'll go right into Route 52, because the planner did mention a while ago, we did have a 52 study done. We have a moratorium on Route 52, about over a year now, has it been? And we, because of COVID again, did delay our plans. We did want to be finished with the review of Route 52. The town board decided to put a moratorium on Route 52 because several reasons, traffic, infrastructure, and also there was some developers wanting to come in, wanting to put different types of businesses there. And we do have contamination down Route 52, groundwater contamination with salt, as our town planner did mention earlier. The DOT salt shed did contaminate many wells, many homes in that area, and we are looking to expand water and sewer down there to help some of the people. Also, there's a lot of failed septic systems. I've mentioned this many times before at town board meetings, how the Board of Health is requesting and demanding some of these businesses to put these systems in for the water and sewer to remediate. And it's very expensive, very, very expensive for these businesses. Some of them can't even afford it. So we do have to come up with a plan for Route 52. The town board said, let's take a time out, see what's going on there. We did hire Behan Planning. They did a thorough planning study on the corridor. And Michelle, you want to just give a brief overview again about that and
Yeah,
how
sure.
they looked at traffic and water sewer?
They looked at traffic, they looked at land uses, they looked at infrastructure, and essentially, they really thought that section of the Route 52 corridor could become potentially a vibrant hamlet center, and they recommended that, assuming we could get the infrastructure to work, that we do some sort of an overlay zone in that area that allows for some more slightly denser residential than we typically allow here, and we consider some traffic roadway improvements as well, and some connectedness and walkability in the area, and try to kind of generate a little bit what, as Joe was talking about, a little bit of a hamlet center there, and maybe some mixed uses as well.
Right, so we know there's traffic issues. We know that we need turning lanes right by the police station going on to 376. We do know that there is traffic lights to be placed right by the Taconic State Parkway. Heavy traffic generator, Taconic State Parkway. I-84, that's the hub right there. We did have a traffic study done on the Route 52 corridor, and as you can see, it is very thick, very big study, and because there's a lot of issues there. So we know that whatever development is going to come into that corridor, we have to address all these problems first. And like I said, foremost is water and sewer. Definitely, we need to tackle the water and sewer in that area. Do the board members have any comments about the moratorium or 52?
Well, Mr. Supervisor,
Yes,
just,
sir.
the concept of an overlay zone would be, we would prepare and submit to the board, is a concept that would say between the Taconic and just past Blue Hill Road, this new zoning would be enabled, provided that certain conditions were met. And we'd be able, through the traffic study that the town board commissioned, identify what traffic improvements would be required to allow a certain higher density, if you will, on that corridor. And that would be turning lanes, traffic lights, everything as you said. It would talk about the sewer and water requirements, and routes have been conceptually figured out by the town engineer, and put all of that together so that the overlay zone would say, if you meet these 4 requirements or are willing to do them, then your property is eligible to have this designation. And that designation would be any of the uses that Michelle and her committee have indicated: assisted living, higher density townhouses, senior housing, whatever it would be. And obviously, to bear the cost of this, that goes into how many units would be on the property. So that's still, but at least we would have in our master plan and in the zoning ordinance tool that could be used. And then likewise, that same concept could be applied to other corridors if the board chose, like Fishkill Plains. You might want to expand beyond just second stories with apartments. You may want to allow some of the bigger areas to have a higher density, because we all know that Fishkill Plains corridor is suffering from the lack of sewer. And a lot of the plazas are empty because they have very small septic systems on those plazas, and they can't support the use that restaurants or other types of businesses that are high water consumers would need, so.
Yeah, and I'll make a mention, thank you, Town Attorney. I'll make a mention at the next meeting when I give my announcements, but as the attorney indicated, there is a sewer issue down 376 into Fishkill Plains. And recently, I've been working on a plan with the town of Wappinger to do an intermunicipal sewer project that comes from East Fishkill all the way into Wappingers to the airport. We have been studying this for several months. The Economic Development Director, Supervisor Thurston in Wappingers, and myself, also Clark Patterson Lee and our consultants, have really took a detailed look at what that would be. We are applying for several grants. The town of Wappinger has a failed septic or sewer plant, I should say, at the Royal Ridge housing development, and they have an immediate need and have to come up with an immediate solution. So we came up with a large plan, like I said, from Fishkill Plains into Wappinger to the airport. And we did meet with New York State Economic Development Agency to discuss about a large grant. They provide up to 50% funding. Well, it's a very large project to the tune of $56 million. We did have an initial meeting with New York State Economic Development, and they gave us some pointers on how to successfully apply and try to get approval for a grant large as this. And we do have some more homework to do. We might be tweaking the plan. But yes, we understand that sewer is sorely needed in Fishkill Plains and of course 52. So, any comments from anyone about 52? Board? But I think,
in all the points that were mentioned before, I mean, Route 52 corridor over there by the Taconic and the police station, it is an issue with traffic. That needs to be addressed before anything else. And of course, you mentioned the water issues over there, and
Yeah, terrible water problems,
Yeah.
yes.
so, like we spoke before, I mean, we would love to do all these projects, but we have to really think about the infrastructures and how we're gonna be able to take care of that before we allow, people, investors are not gonna spend their money if they know they're not gonna have their returns. It's just as simple as that. And no one is gonna come in a location if they already know that there is no availability of sewer and water. I mean, that goes without saying, so.
Right.
That is one of the big things that we need to work on, and we're gonna take care,
Well, I think that's why we have the moratorium till June, and I'm going to be working on, as the attorney mentioned, an overlay zone for Route 52, present to the town board for approval and to review, and include everything that the attorney said. In that overlay zone has to be water, sewer, traffic infrastructure, all those sort of things, if there are to have whatever project is come forward, so.
I know that the state is gonna repay 52, Nick. Are they planning on doing any work by the police station as far as the turning lane over there?
No, they say, New York State Department of Transportation say that they're broke. They have no money for no projects. Basically, when we came up with the traffic solution for Route 52 for the Amazon project, as you know, this town board is getting the funds from all the developers along that corridor. Largely, of course, Amazon to pay the largest price tag. But we went and got this fully funded on our own, because DOT said, you want a roundabout? God bless you, but you have to pay for it. You wanna have improvements to the traffic for the school? You have to pay for it. You want a town road to connectability for I-84? You have to pay for it. So that's what we did, so. Unfortunately, here, it's a little different. The traffic improvements that are needed on 52, we're going to have to include in the overlay zone for developers to have to contribute to.
Well, I think water and sewer is absolutely needed. I mean, water is pretty much a basic necessity, so that should definitely be our first priority. But the traffic on Route 52 is horrendous some days. I remember one time back when I was part of the fire department, and we were trying to get to an accident on Taconic, and because of that accident, all the traffic backed up onto Route 52. And I know this is an extenuating circumstance. We could not physically get through 52. There were cars that were doubled up on both sides of the road, and it's like impossible to get through there. And some sort of solution needs to be solved, even for the day-to-day traffic throughout that corridor. So definitely a good first step.
Great. Any other comments? Committee members, any thoughts, questions, planner? No? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate it. Michelle, excellent job. Craig, Joe, thank you so much for your time. And all the board members who participated, thank you. We did have, every town board member here picked one member of the community to sit on this committee, and it worked out really well. So, thank you, thank you. So with that, there are anything else to discuss? We have no other town business tonight. We do have one announcement, is we have Town Cleanup Day coming. When is that?
May 1st,
May 1st.
8 to 8:30 registration.
We will be advertising that. I'll put that on our website and all social media, unless it's already there.
It's already there.
Probably it's already there. And the only other thing I want to say is a very happy birthday to Deputy Supervisor Peter Cassidy.
Okay.
Happy birthday.
No cake?
No cake.
Happy
Great
65th.
for you.
No pie?
When's his birthday?
Today.
Ah,
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, 65.
congratulations.
Plus.
Tom, that's all right. Maybe Manny's age for a minute.
With that, our next town board meeting is April 22nd, 2021, at 7 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming.